About a year and a half ago, I started Let's Write, a series of writing lessons. And yeah, I only made one lesson. Sorry about that. I think I'll change it up a bit as I get back into it though. This video, for example, is not a lesson per se, but a discussion. So let's get into it. This edition of Let's Write is a discussion/response to a video by Unique Nameosaurus entitled Why All Your Characters Should Be Bi, and It's Not Why You Think, featuring Legend of Korra. The point he makes in the video is interesting and I think it's worth talking about. So let's hear what he has to say.
I think the fact that we default to straight characters is indicative of the current state of relationship arcs. That being that no one really thinks about what characters work together. I have seen so many goddamn character arcs where they just take the main girl and the main boy, and without any thought into chemistry, they just make them go through all the stages of intimacy and then they kiss. Relationship arc done.
Since he uses Legend of Korra as his primary example, I think it's fitting that I use Avatar: The Last Airbender. I know I might be making enemies by saying this, but I don't think Katara and Aang make sense as a couple. It started as a childhood crush, and a one-way crush at that. I found it hard to take it seriously as relationship potential. First of all, we get very little by way of exploring Katara's romantic feelings about Aang. There's far more going on between her and Jet, and that's saying something. I mean, Aunt Wu... Wait. Wu? What the fuck? Aunt Wu says that the man Katara will marry is a powerful bender, and that's when she realizes that it could be Aang. But how does she go through the process of finding out she likes him and then deciding to be with him? We just don't know. As for the chemistry, I don't know if they have that either. Aang just goes along with everything that Katara says, including the morally questionable things that he is reluctant to do.
I don't know about this. These clothes belong to somebody. I call it the silk robe! But if it's essential to our survival, then I call the suit.
So she just doesn't seem good for him in that way, and he doesn't seem good for her either. He completely brushes aside something that means a lot to her, seeking revenge for her mother's death.
And what exactly do you think this will accomplish?
I knew you wouldn't understand.
Anyway, so Unique Nameosaurus says that
the reason you make all your characters bi is twofold. One, to encourage you to stop going into stories with a pre-chosen final couple, and number two, more options.
I get where it's coming from, but my perspective is different. Options are good, I think, but self-enforced limitations are a useful part of the writing process. Unique Nameosaurus does briefly touch on where I'm going with this.
The only exception I can see is that if you specifically want to use an element of being straight or gay for your story.
You see, putting these kinds of limitations on your characters forces you to explore the best option for your story. It opens the door to conflict and issues that can add to the story rather than take away from it. Let's say we have two characters, Aaron and Kyle. They're great friends, have similar experiences, have the same hobbies, and they understand each other. They're a perfect match for a couple. But Aaron is bisexual and Kyle is straight. Aaron starts to develop feelings for Kyle, but Kyle can't reciprocate. This allows you as a writer to explore potential conflicts and tensions between these two characters. And within these characters, Aaron has to decide whether or not to express his feelings to his friend, knowing that nothing romantic could ever come from it. Maybe Aaron hopes Kyle is bi and in the closet like he is. Aaron has to decide whether to come out to him and risk the friendship, even if just to get past the secret, this barrier that keeps him from fully trusting his friend. And maybe Kyle is homophobic and is extremely uncomfortable with Aaron coming out or being outed. He has to challenge the biases he's carried with him his entire life, and maybe even decide whether he's okay being friends with Aaron, as people assume he's into guys just because he's friends with Aaron. So by placing the so-called limitation of sexual orientation on one character, all these options become available to you as the writer. And this doesn't even have to be the main story conflict either. Aaron and Kyle could be, I don't know, demon slayers and have to work together to save the world or something. How could this interpersonal conflict affect the main conflict? What if one of their friends ends up hurt as a result of them not working together? So while I agree that smushing two characters together just because they're the main characters or just because we think the main character deserves their sweetheart is just boring storytelling, I think there's something to not opening yourself to all options as a writer. And it's not just gay, straight, or bi either. You can make characters compatible or incompatible in a lot of ways. In other words, I don't think the answer is to make all options available, but to explore the options you do give yourself and see where they lead. But that's just my perspective. What's yours? I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, let's learn, let's grow, let's write.